Hi there. Viruses, exosomes, vaccine. An interesting topic today, and I'll tell you a bit more about all of this. Dr. Brian here from Hands on Superhealth, coming to you with some relevant, timely information, I think. So in one of the previous chats we talked about what's a virus, what's an exosome, and what could be the role of an exosome. So I've done my little bit of research. So an exosome is, you could say it's junk cellular material that the body puts in a little vesicle, so a little round capsule of protein, and then it will either use it in the cell, but most likely it'll actually spit it out of the cell. And then it will travel to another cell which may well pick it up and take it in. So it's equally good and bad, it seems, that it's often used, as has been suggested by many, as an adaptive DNA response, so that the body can't wait for DNA evolution over time, because we would not be able to adapt to our environment in time. So the body uses exosomes, and the body is an amazing community of cells that are constantly in conversation. So the cells communicate with each other via redox signaling molecules, which are produced by the mitochondria, and that's part of the signaling system. And then the exosomes will go where they're called by, I believe, the redox signaling molecules, and go into a cell, and they will potentially help that cell adapt to an environment. So that cell will use some of the used material, or the material from one cell, to help another cell. So there's an adaptive component, but there's also a disease component. And so what some of the research is focusing on is the role of exosomes in disease, and whether they can use, if you like, exosomes to deliver an antidote or a therapy to help cure a cancer, or particularly neurodegenerative diseases, so nervous system degenerative diseases. That's pretty exciting, it's quite interesting. And so the question is, what's the difference between a virus? Because we know we have a virome that's huge, and they're not all inside trying to kill us, they're actually inside helping us. So when we look at an exosome and a virus, we're potentially looking at cousins of the same family. Now, exosome sounds like it's slightly bigger, because it doesn't just carry RNA, which tends to be the case for viruses. They're RNA and occasionally DNA. Where an exosome will carry proteins, DNA and RNA messenger RNA. So that means they actually have a bit more varied function. There's probably a crossover where they are so alike you can't tell the difference. It's quite likely we call it a virus when it's outside the body, and more of an exosome when it's inside. So what do we do about this? I guess not an awful lot. So as always, if we have a healthy internal environment, a healthy environment for the body, so we're not creating cellular stress, we're not creating difficulties for the cells to survive, that means they need to do more adaptation, then the body isn't going to be looking for external help from the cells. The body's going to be more on guard. There's a discussion around the concept of redox signaling molecules. Now, supplementing with those, we know, improves outcomes. We're not entirely sure of the mechanism, but we're fairly sure that they improve cellular communication and improve the body's ability to detect, repair and replace cells. So then they're going to use things like exosomes to actually do some of that repair work. If we need some alphabet that's missing, then we'll call an exosome, we'll pull that in and we'll do a repair job. Or the cell's just beyond repair, so the body will break it down into its constituents and reuse all the bits. It's like breaking the Lego toy you've made, and now you've just got a bunch of Lego on the floor and you can make it back into a new thing. So that's sort of the cleverness of the body. It's pretty amazing. the original conservation system. So, so where does a virus or a vaccine come in around this? So I've also just had a quick look. So there's in the news today, it's the 10th, it's the 9th still in the US. News this morning that Pfizer and a German biotech company have released a vaccine that has a 90% efficacy rate at reducing symptoms. So we haven't actually, the data is press release data. It's a press release at the moment, it's not scientific data. So we don't know what happens to their antibody level, we don't know whether they are actually the same as all the asymptomatic people walking around who have a mild infection that they don't know about, or whether it's actually we're taking people that are quite sick and they take this vaccine and they get better. So it moves it actually to a therapeutic rather than a direct anti-infective. So and it's focusing on the protein spike. So in the early, sort of late last year, early this year, the discussion was around the protein receptor site, which is the ACE inhibitor protein, and the protein on the SARS-CoV-2 bug is actually a match for that ACE inhibitor. So people using, this is in the data, people using ACE inhibitor drugs for heart pressure, for blood pressure, the body upregulates those receptor sites, so those people were likely to have maybe a high level of let's say not infection, but a higher level of symptomatic response, because the virus could get into more cells and cause trouble. And particularly in China and Wuhan in the early stages, there was definitely this observation of quite a rapid escalation of acute inflammatory response, which is the body sort of going into a panic and creating a high inflammatory response, which is the body's defense to an infection, sort of create an inflammatory response that will actually allow the cells to get rid of the virus out of the cells and actually send the immune system in and get inside the cells to sort of destroy the invader. So we're still talking viral load, so you have to have a certain amount of infection. You can't really, your body could not get sick in all likelihood from 1 or 2 fragments of virus. That's the time when you get the probe up your nose or down your throat. You're actually quite happy, quite well, but suddenly you come back with a positive test. And that's actually another question. The PCR test is notoriously unreliable because the amount of viral load that you might have would be quite low. They're taking a small sample of goop from round about your nose and throat, and then they won't find anything on that sample on its own, so they have to amplify it, which means they put it into a process where they grow it up to 45 times, between 30 and 45 times, to find a sample big enough to detect. Otherwise it's actually too small, which is probably why you didn't feel sick, because it's such an infinitesimal amount of viral load. Your body is coping with it, and it's going to mount its own T cell and immune cell response, so that basically you might test positive to an antibody test later, but in terms of that PCR test that's actually looking at the presence of the virus in your body, it's potentially your body has that code of sequence in the exosomes, and when you scoop up a whole lot of some goop in tissue and amplify it, you actually find that sequence. So it could be that a certain percentage of the population had that already, because it's just part of how their body's adapting to the fact that there is actually an infection rate in the local community. So very interesting stuff. Something more to look at. There's obviously quite a bit of development. There's a lot more to be done in terms of data crunching with this initial exciting finding that there's an 80% or 90% efficacy in terms of reducing symptoms. So that is, and the study's still quite short, so normally the studies take longer because they're actually looking to see what other effects there may be. So we don't know whether this makes these people more susceptible to the wild virus, and that has been the case with pretty well all the other virus or vaccines in the previous studies, the animal studies, that they got a very good response, and when they exposed that animal population to the wild virus, they got particularly sick, and a number of them died because now the body had a reverse response. It got quite sick, sort of like those people in China who had the sort of hyper response where the body had an acute inflammatory response that actually was a bit that killed them. So we're hoping it goes well, because we do want people to feel that they can access this therapy if it's effective and safe, if that's what they want. I would not be in favour of it being a compulsory thing, partly because we should be free to choose what we do with our bodies. An interesting factor that will potentially have some impact on its deliverability, it needs to be kept at -50°C. Now that's pretty damn cold, and that is no domestic freezer or fridge. It is uber cold, so it may not be, it could have real deliverability problems worldwide. So there are other candidates that are being developed that don't require the same degree of supercooling, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens over the next few months. I'm thinking it may sort of lose some of its importance as time goes on, as we get into the early next year. So that's my contribution for the day, that the body's amazing, your health is your greatest resource. It comes as a result of moving well, eating well, thinking well, and having a spiritual overlay where you believe in your body's ability to heal itself. So stay super healthy, and know that the healthy don't get sick, but the super healthy always thrive. Okay, look forward to speaking to you soon.